All right. Thank you all and welcome to this special school committee meeting of the Greenfield Public Schools. We are here tonight to interview for the second time and hopefully choose a new superintendent for our schools. So first, as we begin, and it is Monday, February 2nd, 6:30 p.m. And now we're due a roll call of the members.
There it goes. Member Deneve,
Present.
Mayor Disorger,
Here.
Member Deitman,
Here.
Member Goodwin,
Here.
Chair Sexton,
Here?
Vice Chair Childs,
Here.
and Secretary Webb. I am also here.
Thank you. We have a quorum and are called to order at 6:31, I believe it is now. I also want to introduce two guests that we have who will be with us for the interview portions of this evening. We have Judy Bennett and Tara Cloutier, who are both representatives of our Greenfield Education Association, our teachers union, and they have a question on our list that I would like to give them the privilege to ask themselves. So, now that you know a little bit about who's in the room, we have time for public comment. Are there any members of the public in the room which would wish to make public comment? Seeing none, are there any members of the public online who would wish to make public comment at this time? Please raise your hand or honestly just holler out, because I can't see you on our iPad. I see somebody who looks like they might be wanting to. Anybody? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. I'm not seeing any chats come through. So public comment going once. Public comment going twice. Public comment gone 3 times. We are closing public comment at this time and moving on to our first interview of the evening. I'd like to welcome our first candidate, Sharon Conoyer, to come up. And we have on the table for you, the laminated list is a list of the questions we have to ask. We have a couple of pieces of scratch paper in case you want to take some notes to gather your thoughts, and that water is also for you in case you should need it. And I'll just have, there you go, double check, make sure that's green. That means that we can hear you. And if it's all good with the members, we'll go ahead and proceed. Great. So the way that we'll take this is we have also a list of questions that we're going to ask before us that were determined in advance. And we will go around starting with Member Deneve this time to ask the first question and each subsequent question. So Member Deitman, you'll ask number 2, Member Childs, you'll ask number 3, and so on and so forth until we get to the end of our questions. For this interview, we have about 75 minutes, so 8 questions, you have time, right? With that, let us begin. Member Deneve, would you please ask the first?
Thank you for being here. Question 1, why you for Greenfield and why Greenfield for you?
Sorry, I remember we inserted a candidate opening statement just
Oh,
briefly. I
okay.
apologize. Can you?
So candidate opening statement first then, please.
Okay.
And then I'll ask my first question.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for having me back. It was lovely meeting, I think, some of you at my first interview. And just as a little, I know most of you have, or all of you have looked over my information. I've been in education this is my 36th year in education. Oh, sure, as a teacher and as an administrator. And a little feedback there. And I'm very excited to bring that experience to Greenfield. I had sure.
We are switching out the mic to resolve some tech issues for those following along on the Zoom. Give us just a second. I also neglected to read the chair statement, so just so folks know, this meeting is being recorded by Greenfield Community Television. If any other persons are present, you must notify you are recording. Thank you, Anthony, our intrepid reporter from the Greenfield Recorder. All right, now that we've got that out of the way. Is this better?
Okay, is that better?
It sounds less squeaky.
Great. So I had a wonderful day today, and I want to thank the administrators and staff who met with me and showed me around and gave me a little bit of a taste of Greenfield and what they were proud of and what their goals were and what they were looking for in leadership and what they've been really proud of as far as the work that they've been able to complete here in the district. And what was really impressive to me over my day today was just a continuity and a commonality in the themes across the district. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the time that you've allowed me to come and spend with you, both in my first interview and in my time with you today. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you have for me today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And my apologies, Member Denis, if you may. Please proceed.
Okay, question one, a two-parter. Why you for Greenfield and why Greenfield for you? How would you apply your experiences in the context of the Greenfield Public School District?
So my experience over my 36 years, which I hate saying over and over again, but because it reminds me how long I've been doing this, but I think has prepared me really well for a community like Greenfield. I currently am superintendent in a regional school district in Connecticut, very different from the school district where I spent the majority of my career, 25 years, in a pre-K through 12 school district in a community very similar in demographic to Greenfield. I have thoroughly enjoyed my experience in the district that I'm in right now as superintendent. It's a large regional high school. It serves up to 13, it's varying numbers of school districts depending on the year, but up to 13 different towns. It has a very complex budgeting system. I've learned so much about the ins and outs of many different parts of the profession. Many of those parts I thought I knew already. I came to Region 19 and figured out that I didn't know all that I thought I did. So that experience has been really, really helpful for me. And I think that why me for Greenfield is I come with that knowledge of both the pre-K-12 experience and also a complicated budgeting system, a very complex system of interacting with a variety of different stakeholders from a variety of different towns that creates the conditions where there has to be relationships between many people in order for us to get it right for our students that are coming with a variety of different needs and a variety of different resources from the towns that they come from. So I think for that reason, that makes me a good fit. I think my work in Windsor Locks, which was the district that I spent 25 years in, is, again, is very, very similar. A little bit smaller, not as many schools, but that pre-K through 12 experience is one that I'm very, very eager to get back to. It's one that I've missed. Like I said, I've loved the high school experience. I was a high school teacher. I was a high school principal for many years and a superintendent where my office, or an assistant superintendent where my office was right in the high school. And I've loved that. But what I really loved about being an assistant superintendent and interim superintendent in Windsor Locks was getting into the pre-K 2 buildings and in our intermediate elementary schools and being able to really work on a team that worked on a progression of knowledge and skills in preparation for that final destination of high school, where you could really see the connection of really creating that mission and vision together as a leadership team, working together with our teachers, knowing that those foundational elements, whether it's the character-based standards or whether it's the academic standards, really build upon each other to get to that ultimate goal of a graduate. I also bring that experience, my experience with NEASC. I've been on the commission for 13 years, I think, in some way, shape, or form, either on the commission. I was chair of the commission for many years and now serve as a trustee. And I think that that experience really helps to bring that continuity to that K-12, pre-K-12 experience in building the vision of the graduate. You don't create a graduate starting in 9th grade. That vision of the graduate starts in pre-K, and those habits of scholarship start in pre-K, and we start to build those in a developmentally appropriate way from pre-K all the way up to the high school. How I would apply those experiences would be, going back to what I love, which is getting into the classrooms, building upon what seems to be an already very strong leadership team, and continuing to build upon that leadership capacity and working with them to continue with the goals that they've already created and the progress that's already been started in building upon the Greenfield Public School District. I think my knowledge of the full pre-K through 12 continuum will help to support that. I think my knowledge of building having been mentored by some amazing superintendents, bringing that to the table and using that knowledge and using those skills to meet the leaders where they are and to be able to listen. I had some really great conversations, and I think what I took away from those conversations is, number one, what I heard was really strong leaders who know what they're doing and where they're going, and they need a leader who's going to listen to them and who's going to recognize their leadership capacity and bring them together and continue to lift up and to continue to help them grow. And I think that that's what I'll bring to the table through our leadership meetings. One of the things that I would like to make a part of my practice was something that was really important to me as a developing leader, which was having meetings, one-on-one meetings with leaders, spending a day in buildings. It would be great to be monthly. That would be my aspiration, to be monthly, to meet and to discuss goals and aspirations, but also to get into classrooms. And it was nice popping in a little bit today when we could, to get into classrooms and to see kind of the magic happening with the kids and with the teachers. And that's something that I think that I would be bringing to the district, is that desire to be boots on the ground in classrooms with leaders and continuing to help the leadership build on their own capacity. They know where they want to go, and I think they know what they would want from me in supporting them to get there.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. Would you please walk us through how you prepare a budget? We're interested not only in your methodology, but also your philosophy.
So the budget prep process it's a little different from the regional district to the Windsor-Locks district. What is similar is I do believe in the staff helping to create that budget. So going back to department heads and having the department heads go to their staff to get input into what the wants and needs are. It's important for me to help create kind of the scenario and what the conditions for that budget is, depending on what the budget climate is for any given season. So knowing what their boundaries are, I don't want to set them up and say, go for it, sky's the limit, in a budget climate that won't support it. So for the past few years, we've had tight budget seasons. So I've had to go to directors and say, I want you to ask for what you need, but we have to stay within these parameters in order to pass the budget. And especially in circumstances where, and I'm not sure if you're in the same circumstance as we are, but we have declining enrollment. So there are some challenges in facing declining enrollment and maintaining the high-quality program that we want to continue to maintain for our kids. And so the very first step in creating the budget is having that conversation with our department leaders. I only have one principal, so here it would be having the conversation with the building leadership, having them go to their department leaders, and then engaging the staff in the conversation around what they need, and then they would bring that back to me. In Windsor Locks, it was a little bit easier where I could ask them to then prioritize. And so then if I had to make cuts, I knew what needed to go. At E.O. Smith, I meet with every single department head prior to going into the winter holiday, because they need to know where I stand based on what they've submitted. So we go through their budget together and we talk about what I think is gonna fly and what isn't. And so they know going into my superintendent's presentation of the budget, what they've asked for. We also have conversations around staffing. The past couple of years, prior to the past couple of years, we haven't had to have conversations about staffing. In these past couple of years, we have around, some difficult conversations around potential reductions based on class size, and where there can be reductions whenever possible due to attrition, and then moving forward there. I also know what is palatable to the community. And when we have 3 member towns, so we have 3 specific member towns, even though we may serve 13 other towns, or 13 total towns, or receive students from 13 other towns. We have 3 member towns who are supporting us financially, and they have different pain points. We have 2 that are very small, and 2 or 3 students, increasing population at the high school has huge impact on their budget. So we have to pay very close attention to, I may only increase my budget by a small percentage, but if they're increasing the number of their students by 3 or 4 kids, it can increase their percentage increase significantly, and it can throw off their budget. And so we go back to the table as my board and myself to look at where we can then make further reductions, even though our bottom line number may be relatively reasonable. If their percentage increase is going to cause them to have to cut teachers and cut staff, we really need to go back to the table, because we are all in it together. And despite the fact that we are 3 pre-K 8 districts and 1 regional high school, if they're cutting kindergarten teachers in one given year and then maybe hiring one back the next year, or whatever the case may be with their budget, it impacts the quality of their program, which impacts the quality of education for the students that we're going to receive in 12 years. And so that process, I like to be inclusive. I like folks to know where they stand. When I do have to make staff reductions, I have the conversations with those folks prior to my submission of the budget. We sit down and have the conversation, even if it's not, even if it's a potential for the position to be reduced, to say your position is going to be discussed. And so you need to know, this is the situation, this is potentially how it can go. It's definite that the position's going to be reduced, or there's potential that it can be reduced. If a position is going to be discussed, we have that conversation with the staff person first. By we, I mean me. I have the conversation with the staff person first. And then we go through different iterations of the budget. present the budget, we discuss it with the board, and they will either accept or they'll send me back with some, a bottom line number that they need me to get to. And then I'll go back to my department heads and to my principal to say, you know, we've got to reduce by so many thousands of dollars, and where do we think it should come from? And where do we think it's going to have the least amount of impact on student program and student experience? I think that's my philosophy. It's the least amount of impact on student experience is generally my goal.
Thank you. It is important that schools work closely with other city departments and city boards. Could you tell us how you have successfully worked in these environments and what you will do here to develop these linkages?
So yes, we, because we have the 3-member towns, we have select people, and in the case of Mansfield, we have a mayor. There are finance boards and select people from those different boards. And there's a variety, there's varying degrees of interaction between those boards. During the last few budget seasons, those interactions have become increasingly more important because times have gotten tough and we've had to tighten our belts, and it's become, you know, much more important that we work closely together. So, as well as with our state reps. So we have several times a year, a couple times a year, municipal meetings where we ask our select folks and our state reps to come and give us the kind of the state of the towns and what are the pain points. We do that when we go into negotiations, and we do that when we're going into budget season. They will sometimes come to our budget meetings. I always offer to go to theirs so that their towns know how their money is being spent, because I think it's really frustrating for those member towns to feel as though they don't have a say. And because ultimately, when we set our budget, if there's no back and forth interaction, or if we're not listening to where they're struggling and what the impact is going to be on their schools and on their other town budgets, then basically they pay the region, and it becomes very one-sided, and the relationship can deteriorate very, very quickly. So having those informational sessions and the listening sessions becomes really, really important. Right now, we're in the process of working through we actually have a Google form out to try and get a meeting together. We've been talking for several years about getting a rolling average, because right now, towns pay based on the number of students that they send. And it's this up and down from, one year to the next. A town can get hit really, really hard on, whether or not they're paying a ton this year and then less next year, and it ends up being really, really challenging for towns to plan on what their budget's going to be. So we have a ad hoc committee on rolling average, and we have a meeting set up with our select folks and with our mayor and our town manager from Mansfield. We're in the process of setting that up to have a conversation, because we found a way without changing statute to work together to potentially look at just a rolling average of taking the average over 5 years and setting that amount so that they can be more planful in their budgeting and not so variable in what they have to contribute to the region, and hopefully not have their staff on pins and needles every year wondering if they're going to have a job. So that working closely piece, becomes very important. Additionally, because the superintendents we're also different, but we share kids, we meet monthly. And for the past 6 years, since I've been there, we've worked collaboratively, because we have to agree on what our goals are for our kids, in order for, as much because I don't have control over that progression. And they are very invested on what happens to their kids when they leave the 8th grade and come up to the high school, having that communication with the superintendents and agreeing on what deep learning should look like, pre-K through 12, has been something we've been working on for the past 6 years. So those communications have been really important.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to, if you don't mind, since your question is 7, I'll skip over the two of you for now. And Member Webb, if you would be willing to ask question 5. Sure. Thank you. Sorry.
Number 5. What is the most valuable lesson you have learned? We are especially interested in an example of a time when something didn't go as planned and how you responded. Also, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so there's so many. In all honesty, nothing ever really goes as we plan, I think. I think one of the most valuable lessons that I've learned, I actually talked about it today, is when we are asking folks for input, whether we're asking teachers or parents or the community, we have to mean it. We can't just invite folks in and say, we're being inclusive and we're asking people for their advice and for their input if the decision's already made. And that was something that I learned a really long time ago. It deteriorates trust. And I think for a long time, that was a practice in not just education, but in organizations in general. There'd be a decision made, and then they would invite folks in and say, well, let's do a survey, or let's do a focus group and get folks' opinion on what that's going to look like. If we're inviting people in to give their ideas and opinions, we'd best be open to putting those ideas and opinions into practice, or including them in that decision-making process. The decision should not already be made. And that was a really important lesson a long, long time ago that I've tried to put into practice. It's the challenge always is getting people to trust that, even when you're really trying to be proactive and you're trying to be upfront about it. That trust piece is really, I think, challenging, and the only way to really build that trust is to continue to practice it and for their input to be visible and tangible in the decisions that are being made. So that's one of the most valuable lessons that I've learned. Time when something didn't go as planned. I think, the most recent was a rollout for, we did a grading and reporting pilot. This is probably our most controversial situation that we've had, where coming out of COVID, there were a lot of changes that COVID forced. It forced a growth mindset, which was a question that we talked about earlier. It forced a different approach to looking at student learning. It approached this whole perspective of trying to be more trying to be understanding, and to a certain degree, we took some of the guardrails off. There were much more flexible deadlines, and there were just, we got a little loose, I think, with all of those things for all the right reasons, because kids were put into this situation. We all were. I think a student described it to me best a few years ago when I was teaching a class where she said she goes, we had mass shared trauma. And I was like, wow. That was super insightful and accurate. And I think with that, there had to be changes. And so as we started to come out of COVID, we tried to rein it back in and start to create some more boundaries for kids. So deadlines started to happen again, and we started to look at our grading practices. So what do we keep from COVID? What do we lose from COVID? And so one of the things that we started to look at was, within our grading and reporting, what were some of those practices that made sense within a growth mindset for kids? And we looked at things like, where was reassessment part of the process? So we pulled together a working group of teachers and parents and kids, and we put together just some guidelines of what stays and what goes. And so we did that for a year. And then the next year we said, okay, so we lived with that for a year, what did we learn? And we pulled together another group of teachers and got some parent input. And where we ended up after a couple years was kind of putting together a more comprehensive pilot and then rolled that out with teachers. The timing on it wasn't as early as we would have liked to have been. So we, presented that to the board after working on it for quite some time. We rolled it out to the board probably in April or April. And so then May, June, it got rolled out to staff, even though they had been, that was for the actual policy. So we rolled it out to the board. In June for the pilot is when it got rolled out to staff. So we had the whole summer to kind of roll that out, but we know summer is not the best time to roll things out because people are coming and going. So we started our first year, or a year back with PD those first couple days with just the pilot, thought things were going great, went through our year, and by the end of the year, after doing surveys and focus groups, we thought everybody was on the same page. And when the policy passed, everybody was not on the same page. And so that was a huge learning experience we thought that the board thought the communication was great. We thought the communication was great. Communication was not, it didn't land. So apparently it wasn't great. We can think it's great all day long, but if it doesn't land, then it wasn't great. So the response to that ended up being, I spent all last summer, the principal and I, meeting with kids and parents and teachers. I just had open office hours for a good chunk of the summer, sitting down and listening to, where are we with this, and where did it go wrong, and what was your perspective of where this was supposed to be, and where is the actual pain point when you look at the policy and what it involves as far as preparing for lessons, or where does reassessment fit in, and there were 5 major points to the policy, and it was really helpful for me and for the principal to listen and to hear, and those conversations are sort of ongoing. Occasionally, someone will pop in and give you an update on how it's going, but we're continuing to survey, because the policy is the policy. We have more teachers who come to the policy meetings now, which is great, because we're able to get some, input in real life, and we're going to be doing another survey of the staff of, how's it going, what adjustments need to be made, and then how do we move forward with that. But that was probably the most the best example of how we thought we had it planned out perfectly. It was a 2 to 3 year transition of a process that just didn't go as smoothly as we thought it was going to go. And there's been a lot of reflection on our part and the part of the board, and on how we would make it better next time.
Hi there. Tell us about a time that you made an effective district-wide change in your time as a leader. How did you decide on a change, and how did you measure the results?
So there's been so many of those as well. So all of the decisions about COVID, I I think I came in 2020, in July 1, 2020, and those are the district-wide changes I think that I was most proud of, in that, walking into that role, for good, bad, or otherwise. I don't know who decides to become a superintendent in a global pandemic. But those decisions that had to be made around the safety of the staff and the students, I think they were all change. My plan coming in as a superintendent was, you don't make changes your first year. You come in and you listen and you get to know people and you build relationships in real life. That's how it's supposed to go. And then entering into a time where, I actually started before I started with working with our reentry committee, which had kids and parents and teachers on it. But our reentry plan, we had two versions. We didn't know if we were starting hybrid or all in person. We ended up going hybrid. I thought that was the right decision for the time, for a school as large as ours with, 1,000 kids in the building. Hybrid was definitely the way to go. And then the following year, I think a change that we made was not going completely back, and this was from input from teachers as well. We didn't go back to completely normal after the first year, after that COVID year. We went back to 4 days normal, and then we had a delayed opening on Wednesday, and it was almost a wellness Wednesday where the kids came in a little bit late, and teachers had professional learning in the morning, and they also had time to work together, knowing that we had kids coming in with gaps, and they needed time to work together. And I think that was, we had to do a lot of explaining, because it was either, the parents either loved it or they didn't. Kids either loved it or they didn't. And the teachers appreciated it, but wanted a little more control over it. So in some cases, it was a little bit of a push-pull on how much of that is their time to prepare for their kids, which they needed, and how much of that was time where we needed to provide them some professional support, professional development on how to help them fill the gap, the learning gap that we were seeing in students. So I think that was, I think that was an effective district-wide change. Now, we did go back to a regular schedule the following year. And again, that was a decision made by a committee made up of teachers. And going into that process, that schedule wouldn't have been my choice. But the committee made up of students and parents and teachers, that was their choice. They needed that continuity. They needed to have that schedule in order for them to get back to normal. And in retrospect, even though it wouldn't have been my choice, it was the best choice, going back to that regular schedule for them.
As a time check, it is only 7:08. We have you until 7:45.
Awesome.
Hello, welcome. Requesting feedback is often described as one of the most impactful practices of effective leadership, even when feedback may be critical of district decisions or working conditions. Please give an example of a time when you actively sought out and responded to feedback from teachers and IAs, instructional assistants, and how you validated and followed up on the responses.
So the grading and reporting policy was one, where we put out open invitations to all staff on that. We survey a lot. Sometimes that just gets lost in translation. And so with the grading and reporting piece, I think it was really very personal, and we didn't want to do a survey. I didn't want to do a survey. I wanted to sit down and talk with folks around what was really the issue. Was it autonomy? Was it the workload? What was really the challenge? And in some cases, those conversations went for an hour. They were great conversations. And I did learn a lot. So, that's probably the most extensive example of where, information was sought out. I know in Connecticut, and I'm sure it's the same in Mass, it's been a minute since I've been a part of a teachers' union in Massachusetts. It's a long time ago. But the Connecticut Teachers Union will do, they'll call it a blitz, where it sounds really scary and bad, but when it's done right, it's great. Because they will interview staff. And then we meet with the executive council, and we'll get, and so it's not a survey, it's just, they have conversations and they bring back information. They bring back what's good, what's not so good, what are some areas that need to be improved, and it's nice because the executive council or representatives from the union will actually sit and meet with their colleagues. Well, they'll get the real scoop, and then they're able to bring that back to us, and we're able to sit down and problem solve and say, okay, so what's the priority of what we really need to focus on? What can we control, and where can we make some headway? So I found those to be really, really helpful. My office is in the building, so I find, and there's a revolving door, in our office. So folks pop in. Yeah, that's another piece too, is, having an open door policy has been really helpful. Drives my assistant absolutely insane. She usually wants to kill me because she's supposed to be the gatekeeper and I'll hear somebody outside. And so for me, like, I don't want to miss an opportunity to hear what somebody has to say if there's an issue. So I'll either get up and go out, or she'll ask, because she usually will know. If my door's open, it means that someone can come in and sit down and have a conversation. So that's another piece as well. I think, sometimes the idea of asking for feedback sometimes can be contrived, and because I've found that when we ask for it, sometimes we don't get balanced feedback. You either get the people who are really happy about it or really not. And so there's no balanced kind of piece. I did find with the Blitz that we got about really balanced feedback of, this is what's going well, these are the things that really aren't going well. Sometimes they were conflicting, which opened up some really interesting dialogue around, okay, so some people think it's great and some people think it's the worst thing ever. So what do we do about that? How do we make everybody happy and get to a place where, folks are on the same page? But I found the open door policy works really well for me, not for my assistant.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming out in the cold on Groundhog Day and a full moon and all the madness of winter. So thank you for coming, because I know it's a long drive.
Thank you.
So this is your opportunity. What questions do you have for us? And were there questions we didn't ask you that you would like to answer?
So I think, my question is, or one of my questions is, as you look, I feel like I got a nice feel, I think, for the district today. This was a great experience, being able to talk to folks and just really get a feel for what's happening in the buildings and what some of the priorities and the goals are, and just how valued your staff is by your leadership is amazingly impressive. It's great. My question is, what are the obstacles that you see that might be preventing progress with the district?
So folks, we've got time. We can each take a moment to answer a question. If you have a response to this, I don't expect everyone to have one, but if you have one that you would like to offer, keeping in mind that we all have our own individual perspectives. None of us are speaking for the committee at this point. Does anyone have something that they would like to say in response to that? Okay, I'm going to do Member Deneve, then Member Goodwin, and then Member Childs.
I think this is my 5th year on the committee. So from my perspective, every year, or almost every year, there has been disquiet around budget transparency. And I think that's something that would really serve our district is a new way to look at the budget. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with the budget. I just think that it's not as digestible as it should be, both for the committee, for our city councilors, and for the public at large. So I think that we've made a lot of changes and we've grown a lot as a district and as a committee. But I think that that is something that just keeps coming again and again, is how can we, like, there's really no more education that we can do on it. We're at the point where I think we need to rethink how we're communicating it and how we're looking at it as a whole. So that's something that I would like to see change.
Thank you.
Declining enrollment, we have dropped in the last 10 years from almost 2,000 to 1,300. So we've dropped. We have an amazing staff, and I'm glad you caught that. But we also have had change in staff. I think one of the things that happened with the pandemic was a lot of people chose to retire. So we have a lot of new staff. And we've had turnover in principals. One school has had almost a new one every year. So that's really hard for teachers and it's hard for families. So I think that's the big piece. We are a city of poverty, and we're looking to bring in more businesses, more partnerships, working with places like GCC, our community college, our YMCA, somebody who can build those relationships, because we are in it together. And it's hopeful to have somebody who is willing to work on those partnerships.
Very similar to what my colleagues have said. For the budget, along with the need for it to be transparent and communicated in a way that anyone can pick it up and just fully understand all of it, state aid isn't where it should be, and so we have to deal with the reality that we're given. And with the economy of scale, when we have our declining enrollment, that just makes the budget trickier. And then also on the staff note, retaining the IAs, the instructional assistants, and recruiting them when they're so key for our most vulnerable kids. And it's a hard job, and it's hard to find people that are the right people for the job and who will stay in it, especially with what we can afford to pay them. So I'd say those are the biggest obstacles I see.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor.
That was a good question. And I'd echo what some of the others said about the incredible staff that we have and the incredible support you'll get from families. Not being able to fill vacancies is one item. And the ability of the children to read has kept the schools as a whole from succeeding or progressing. I think we need to focus more on that. First they have to learn to read, and then later they read to learn. And that is, I'm not in the schools, that's what I've heard. And I've seen factually the data on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Got anything from staff perspective? Great. Oh, yes, go ahead. Member Deitman.
Thank you. Yeah, kind of following up on some things that have been mentioned. It's a relatively low-income district with very high needs. Our student population has a relatively high rate of special needs, 504s, disabilities, and other things. This makes it really challenging, and it makes it feel like the district is always strapped. And so there are conversations going on about changing the state level Chapter 70 funding, which would be fantastic. I'm not sure exactly where those conversations are, but we run into challenges in this district because we already have rather high property taxes, and at least as a rate, our property tax rate is quite high, and then the property values are lower than those of the state average, so it comes out to not enough money. So this is a constant tightrope walk that it seems like we've been walking for a long time. And it seems like it calls for innovation and creative solutions.
How would you, is that,
I just wanted to add
Sure.
one more thing. Sometimes I think that we are our own worst enemy and that our obstacle can be self-perception. Our students are amazing. Our staff are phenomenal. Our district is actually really cool, and our kids do some cool stuff, statewide even. And sometimes we don't do a good enough job of making sure that everybody knows that we're actually pretty cool. We're great, you know? And yes, all of these challenges that my colleagues have mentioned are real, and they're solvable. Like, we can make progress here. And in the meantime, we're still doing some really good stuff. And I don't want us to get caught in a loop of thinking that we're the worst thing in the world because of all of these challenges. So I just wanted to name that as well.
thank you. I think that's a challenge, I think, too, with, we forget to self-promote and to pat ourselves on the back and put it out there. It's, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that schools sometimes have, especially if you don't have all the resources of some bigger districts where you have someone especially hired to, you know, take pictures and do press releases every 3 seconds. So it becomes, you know, it has to be that priority of, you know, how do we make sure that all those great things are getting out there so that everybody knows. How do you see, how would you describe relationships between town officials and school officials?
We're working on it. Yeah, I would say that they're not as bad as they could be. They're certainly improving. Their lines of communication are open, you know, no one is stonewalling anyone else. And I think that the point about having, for instance, budget documents that are just accessible, that are very clearly laid out, that is one example of ways that we could improve communication through just being transparent even more, you know? So nobody is, yeah, we're not fighting, but I do think that there could be more regular communication that happens. That's my take on it.
Great, thank you.
I think that we've entered a new era recently, and I have really high hopes for change. I think that we have some brand new city councilors that are very interested in learning about school funding and are very interested in working with us. And in past years, we haven't had any communication with city officials. There was just no talk across lines. And now we have that. So I think that if we step up to the plate as a committee and create avenues and experiences for them to interact with us, I think they will hopefully do the same. And I look forward to having lots of joint meetings with them across complementary subcommittees. So I think that we're on the path towards that being really positive. But we have not begun that work yet.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to answer one question from earlier today, if that's okay. So there was a question asked at the meet and greet that we didn't have time for around growth mindset and how do you kind of go about instilling or putting forward or teaching, I guess, fostering a growth mindset amongst staff. And, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, I thought about that all day. in my 2 hours in between about how we've done that in other districts. And it was a little bit different in each district. So, in Windsor Locks, I think in either way, you start with an educational component, a professional development component of folks really knowing and understanding. So, you can go down the Carroll Dweck Road and you can do the research and share it and make sure that staff know and are up to speed on it. I think at this point, most folks know what growth mindset is and how it works. What's really hard to know and measure is a belief in it. Do we believe that all kids can learn at high levels? And beyond that, do we believe that we can teach all kids to those high levels? Just kind of takes that question to the next level. And, if we do, how do we go about doing that? And what are the supports and the structures that we need to have in place? So, rolling that out involves a lot of conversation, an honest conversation with our staff around, where are you? Do you believe that? And what do you need in order to make that happen? And what are the systems and the structures that would support that? Because as we mentioned a little bit earlier today, traditional education isn't necessarily set up to support a growth mindset. Our grading practices in general don't support a growth mindset. You take a test, you fail it, and you move on. It's an autopsy of what you don't know. So it's not really set up to, you make a mistake, and then you have an opportunity to go back and actually learn what you didn't know before. So it's a different process, and you have to go about, relearning what that instruction can look like, and what that formative assessment process looks like, that then leads up to your summative. So that summative assessment's not an autopsy of what you don't know. It's now just a validation of what you learned along the way and what's the instruction look like. So in Windsor Locks, we did that instructional piece, and we built it into the teacher eval process with teacher support. Teachers were a big part of our brand-new T-val document that we did 8,000 years ago. At EO, it was a little bit different. It was more built into the policy as we went through those iterations for grading and reporting. And, what the reality is now is that teaching and learning has changed. Gone are the days of, it's my job to teach, it's your job to learn. It's now, it's my job that you learn. And so if our data is saying that kids haven't learned, how are we supporting our teachers in making sure that they can support kids in getting that learning done? So there's different ways to get there, but I think collaboratively with the teachers and with the administrators, because the absolute last thing that will work is doing it to anyone. It has to be done with. And so figuring out what works for Greenfield in figuring out, where do we stand on a growth mindset, and then what are the best steps that we need to take to move it forward in a way that supports the strategies and the systems that would make it work for kids. Because ultimately, I think, most of the research shows that what gratifies teachers the most is when they see their students successful. That's why teachers get into the business. It's because they want to see their kids successful. And so how do we support that through that collaboration?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've reached the conclusion of our formal interview process for our first candidate. We really appreciate your time and your answers. At this time, we will not be deliberating right now. We'll wait until after the second candidate. You're free to stick around if you'd like, or I know that you have quite a long drive, and we'll be in touch either way. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great seeing you.
For the members, we will not be deliberating right now. I suggest if you have a moment, take some notes, jot your thoughts down. What stuck out to you? What did you like? What did you have concerns about, if anything? What would you like, what would you wish you would have known more about? When you think about the best fit for our district, sort of ask yourself, is this candidate that person? Do not deliberate with one another. That will come later, but you are recessed until the next candidate comes, and the next interview will start at 8 p.m. Thank you all, also members of the audience, for being here. 8 p.m. thank you, everyone, for being back. Oh, it looks like we are absent our recording secretary. I would like to give her just a moment to get back. Aha, there she is. Excellent. Perfect timing. So everyone, thank you so much for welcome back. Thanks so much. Let me remember to unmute so our friends online can hear us again. So that's great. It is 7:59, so we're even a little ahead of schedule. And we are getting ready to start the second interview with our second candidate, Carol Cruiser. We have time, and just to give everyone, so everyone knows how it works, we're going to give time for you to give your opening statement. And then we'll start with Member Goodwin asking question number 2 and go around just like we did for the last candidate. We have 75 minutes set aside for these, opening statement and 7 additional questions, so we've got time.
Okay.
And with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. Everyone ready? Excellent. And I did want to let you know that we have 2 additional guests. These are representatives from our Education Association, our union, and they have a question on here that they will be asking themselves. So
Okay,
just
great.
wanted to let you know. All right, with that, please, we'd love to hear. Do you have an opening statement for us?
Sure. Well, I'm Carol Cruiser, and before I start my opening statement, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thanks for a great day. Thank you for ordering the sunshine, because it made it a whole lot better. It was gorgeous to be out and about today. It was wonderful to see your schools and see the energy of your schools, and driving around town. I got to spend some time at the library while I was waiting for the interview, and it was such a nice, wonderful place. Got a little bite to eat and gave me a sense of what a vibrant community Greenfield is. So I'm just really happy to be here. So thank you very much for the opportunity. So the opening statement, I just want to say that I hope that through my resume and the recommendations and conversations that you might have had with people that in Chicopee, colleagues, staff, people in the community, I hope you got a little sense of who I am, and hopefully we'll expand on that tonight. That you'll see that I'm a collaborative, empathetic, inspirational leader. And what I would like to do is make sure that all your questions are answered so that you understand that I'm steady, I'm dedicated, and I really think that my values align with what you're looking for in Greenfield through talking with people and through whatever my research of Greenfield is. It's very similar to where I come from. It's very similar to some of the things that we've been working on. And I just think that I'm really ready to be of service to Greenfield. It's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, and I have that. It's going to take time, and I think that I'm a very stable leader that can help. I would like to enhance all the stuff that you have going great here, and I'd also like to work with the school committee and the teachers and the staff on what you would like to improve and go forward with Greenfield schools. So some of the things that I want to make sure that I'm focusing on is strong academic inclusive teams that will guide instructional excellence and will help with continuous improvement. I'm also really an advocate for mentoring and supporting staff, making sure that they have everything they need to feel empowered and ready to handle all the complexities of the schools. They need strong to be able to deliver strong academics and to help with all the non-academics and social emotional supports that the students need. So if you were to choose me, I would come here with an open mind, a lot of thoughtful questions, and I would also want to examine all your systems and structures. I saw a little bit today. I would like to dive deep in what you have for structures, how they're working, how they're improving student experience, how they're helping staff help student experience. And finally, I just want Greenfield Public Schools to continue to be and strive to be a place where every single student and staff feels respected, valued, and understand for the students what they would like to see in their future. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. I'm really excited to answer your questions. And I hope you will see that I could be the best fit for superintendent.
thank you so much for coming to Greenfield. We really appreciate having you. And I'm glad you had a great day. So, and thank you for bringing the warm weather, and we really appreciate that.
I thought you
because
brought it to me.
I don't know. So this question has a couple parts. Why you for Greenfield, and why Greenfield for you? How would you apply your experiences in the context of the Greenfield Public School District?
Okay. So, I do think that me for Greenfield and Greenfield is the perfect place to show what I can do to help you get to where you'd like to be and to celebrate what you already have. So one of the things that I think that why I'm a great fit for Greenfield is where my experience is with districts that need help with their accountability scores. I worked very closely with the Massachusetts SSOS and DESE to work on building ILTs and data teams. I've worked with Massachusetts in data-wise cycles and empowering teachers in order to be able to look at how data is used across schools and across the district. My experience is with looking at horizontal alignment. Obviously, Chicopee is a much bigger district, but they have we have a lot of similar demographics. We have a lot of similar aspirations and goals for really giving a strong instructional core for high-quality material. And so I've had a lot of work with that in the high school as a principal. And now for my third year in central office, I've also worked on doing vertical alignment pre-K to K with curriculum, with systems, and with structures. Other experiences that I think would be beneficial for Greenfield and what I bring is I'm the assistant superintendent for support services for Chicopee, and that's about 7,000 students, 15 schools. We do pre-K all the way to 12th grade. And so now I directly oversee anything that is not directly curriculum. So all the social emotional supports, counseling, transportation, nursing, behavior, discipline, food service, athletics, I'm gonna miss something. But I work very closely with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent for instruction. We work together. So, but anything that's not curriculum, I do also work with the summer school and Title I, and the Title I coordinator. So I believe that my experience is putting structures in place, putting safety features in place, looking at making sure that there is the right structures in case anyone feels that they are being bullied. As a Title IX coordinator, I work with civil rights, I work with Title IX, so I've put a lot of procedures in place to make sure that all the reporting of any sort of issues is dealt with swiftly and that there's procedures and policies in place. I've worked with a lot of the discipline and behavior expectations all the way from all the schools and put in place some guidelines to help teachers manage behavior expectations. And I also think I've been a great support to administrators and principals on how to deal with some of those in the classroom. So I really, between being a health teacher and being very strong in social emotional support, and then being a vice principal for a school of about 1,000 for quite a few years, I believe 6 years, 7 years, and then a principal for that same school, I really saw a lot of the instruction. I saw a lot of what needed to be done. And now, being at central office was just vital to understand the budgeting, the politics, what everyone was going through from all ages and all grades, and being able to attack the different problems with teams, sometimes on my own, mostly with teams, in order to make sure that schools and students had the best education, that we were looking at the whole child, that we were looking at how the community could help, and I've done a lot of work with that, with wraparound services. So I do have a lot of strong experience and a lot of different areas and a lot of multitasking. And I've been able to stay laser focused on helping all students get what they need. And I'm also very honest and straightforward about gaps and other issues that still need to be addressed, no matter where I am. And I would do the same for Greenfield. I would look at data, I would ask a lot of questions, I would talk to a lot of people, and make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the direction and the vision of all of you and of myself and of the greater community in Greenfield. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Walk us through how you prepare a budget. We are interested not only in your methodology, but also in your philosophy.
Okay. So it's been very interesting to go from managing a budget of about 100 staff members and 1,000 students for the years as principal, and then being on the other side of that in central office and seeing everything that goes into doing a budget for 15 schools. So this is where I have learned so much in 3 years. So my philosophy for the budget is that you really need to see the vision of the community and of the school committee. And then you have to really look at the strategic plan. I mean, I've looked at yours a lot. I know it goes to 2028 for a lot of your goals. And so you want to make that strategic plan and the vision of your community and school committee into a reality. And my philosophy is that there's a lot of things you have to consider and a lot of voices that you need to hear from. And you always have to get, how can I use the budget in the best way to move student achievement and to move student goals? So that always has to be in your forefront. But then you do have to understand the realities of the world. Facilities, the increasingly transportation budget, the special education expenses and out-of-district expenses, heat, supplies, all that has to be taken into account. So you kind of have to look at, what's essential, and then what is, okay, that's nice to have, but we can do without it for the moment. Obviously, the philosophy right now is we have to take a real hard look at what's going on in the city and in the federal government and in the state government. And it's really important to stay really right on course with that and know what's going on and know that it can change by the day. So I think that's really important. And you also have to think about what you have for a foundation budget, for a local budget, and then what you have for grants and what you could possibly get for grants if there's special projects or anything out there, because there definitely is, depending on what you want and depending on what your priorities are. So a lot of my philosophy is always going back to what is in the best interest of students. As far as methodology, you need to start early. You need to start with a budget calendar. And so what I would do is I would, go from what we have done in Chicopee and what you have done in Greenfield, which I think I've looked at both and been involved in Chicopee, obviously, and they're kind of similar, to start really, really early. And then you need to get the players in the same room or in many rooms as you're talking. So that would be talking to the school committee, the city council, getting feedback from others in the community. And then I would want to spend a lot of time with the assistant superintendent of instruction, teaching and learning, because that's vital. And obviously the business manager, I did see that there was a posting on the 29th for one. And so that's really important. The director of pupil services is huge because special education is such a huge component to a lot of people, the budget. And then you have to get into the buildings and sit down with the principals and the principal's team and who the principal wants you to talk to. What do the teachers need? What is going to move curriculum? What is going to give you the best outcomes for your students? And so you can't just look at what's good for tomorrow and what's good for next year. You have to have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. Buildings get older, things need to be replaced, things need to be fixed. So I would look at all of that, and I would work on it with those people, and then I would come back over and over. Another part of my methodology would be to make sure there's no surprises. You can't always predict surprises. You can't always predict a leaky roof, or I saw today a pipe had burst in one of the elementary schools. I know they're fixing that kindergarten, so you can't predict everything. But you can go with the scenarios. You can say, what if this happens? You can have plan A, plan B, and plan C. And when you have to go to the plan B or plan C, then I would want to make sure that the schools know it, the union is aware of it, the school committee is aware of it, city council, and just come back to the table. So it's a lot about communication, and it's a lot about transparency. It is tough times right now, and so we want to make sure that we're working as a team, and we're hearing all the voices. And then when the tough decisions have to be made, I put that out for the school committee and to see which way you would like me to go. And so that's how I would do it.
Hi. Thank you for coming. It is important that schools work closely with other city departments and city boards. Could you tell us how you have successfully worked in these environments and what you will do here to develop those linkages?
So I think one of the biggest positives and one of the reasons I've been so successful in Chicopee is I have been there a long time. So I've developed a lot of relationships over the years, and I do understand that the importance of that. So I think it's unbelievably important to have those relationships, that people know that they can come talk to you, that people believe in your integrity, and they believe that they can trust you. And so if I were to work here with city departments and city boards, I would want to have similar relationships, and that means putting the time in. That means having the conversations, being around, going to whatever open meetings that I am allowed to go to, invited to, watching them as well when I can. I have seen a couple city council meetings, and so I think it's important that you build the trust and that people trust me. So as student support, as vice principal, and now as the assistant super of student supports, I work very closely with the city council, but I also work closely with the fire department, the police department, and outside agencies in the city. So I'm responsible for working with the police department on lockdown trainings, and I did this year. I did a professional development myself with the help of the police department, and I trained all staff on fire hazards, safety hazards, lockdown procedures. We also added some signs of suicide and some mental health in there. And it was important for me to do the PD myself with a little help from a police officer for a few things. But it was really important for me to do the PD myself so that the people that I work with understood that I understood the importance of it, that I believe safety is the biggest, most first priority that you have to have in order to run schools and run a district. And I needed that, the staff, the paras, the teachers, to see that I believed what I was saying and I meant what I was saying. I work with the fire department on, and our director of maintenance. We work when we do fire inspections. We also did, when I first came as the assistant superintendent, we hired an outside agency to do a huge safety audit, physical safety audit with all 15 schools. And I worked with these outside agencies just to look at everything, from boiler rooms to vestibules, to cameras that were needed, looking at the physical safety and the procedures that we had for safety. And I worked with those outside agencies and the city departments. I have a very good relationship with the mayor, and I've known him a long time. We've worked together. He was a parent of one of the students before he was the mayor. So I feel that I am very capable of understanding the complexities that come from trying to run a city, and how being the being a superintendent, you're a vital part of that. And you need to be able to work with with the different organizations and understand that everyone wants the best for the citizens. So as superintendent, I have to fight for the school, I have to fight for what's right. But we also have to make sure that we're a team as a city. So I have done a lot, and just to recap there, I just think that I want to start right out of the gate getting to know people. And I think once people talk to me and they know me and they hear from me, the trust will build and they will know that I am honest and I do what I say and I follow through and I spend the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here. What is the most valuable lesson you have learned? We're especially interested in an example of a time when something didn't go as planned and how you responded.
How much time did you say I had? Okay, wow. I could answer this a lot. I could answer this all day. So I think one of the most valuable lessons that I've learned through my time going through the different jobs that I had, vice principal, principal, teacher, assistant superintendent, is that you have to be as thorough as you can and prepared as you can with whatever plan you're doing. But then you also have to be willing to say, I was wrong, or this isn't working, or we need to adjust. And I know that's vague, so I'm going to be more specific because I could give a few examples. When I was a principal, we did have difficult time in our special education subgroup. We were working to improve our scores. We were working to improve in our classroom. And so we went to look at our co-teaching model for special education. This was right before pre-pandemic. So we did a lot of work. We looked at the data and we looked at what was going on in our classrooms, and we realized that we needed to be way more inclusive. We needed to get students who are not islands, who were not sub-separate, and get them into the classrooms as much as possible. And so we did. We worked with a lot of district help. It was not just me. We worked with a national consultant, Dr. Lisa Diekert. She's worked all over the country. And she was instrumental in working with inclusive practices and coaching us, coaching principals, coaching teachers on how to include students more in the classrooms and how to do co-teaching. And there's different models, obviously, but we worked, and we had some teachers who definitely had done co-teaching, we had done in the past, but we really went full force in how to do parallel teaching and how to do a lot of different types of co-teaching. And it was working, and we were making some progress. But we were looking at the data, and then, unfortunately, the pandemic happened. So after the pandemic, we really struggled, as I think a lot of people, with keeping teachers. And we struggled with being able to hire enough teachers and hire enough special education teachers. So once we continued to look at that data with our ILT and our administrative team, what we found was that it was difficult to have that true co-teaching model the way we planned it when teachers were changing a lot. So what I learned from that valuable lesson is you have to keep learning and you have to keep growing. And you have to take the best parts of what you learn and then keep moving. And so that's what we're doing now. So there's great parts about co-teaching. And the inclusive practices that we learned and we modeled were fabulous. But now we're trying to fit that into a model where we have a huge amount of special education students. So we don't always have the amount of staff to have co-teaching the way we originally thought we would be able to have it. So now we're looking at the data and we're putting them into, we're looking at the students and looking at their goals and looking at their IEPs and sort of making individual plans for each of them and how teachers and special education teachers and the general education teachers can help them. So we've focused on really improving Tier 1 instruction and really identifying the Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions that can help the students. So there's a lot of lessons I've learned, but the biggest one is to keep looking at the data and making sure that you're adjusting when the data tells you need to adjust, and making sure that you're willing to admit that you don't have all the answers and that you need really good teams and you need people around and you need to listen to everybody and everyone to come to the table. And then you adjust and you take the best, and then you admit that things don't work and you move forward.
Thank you. Please tell us about a time that you made an effective district-wide change in your time as a leader. How did you decide on a change, and how did you measure the results?
So coming in, this is my third year in the district level, but like I said, I've been in the district for a long time. And I would say the district-wide change that I made when I came up was to try, and it's working, to get the 15 schools to kind of row in the same direction when it came to behavioral expectations and supports for behaviors in the classroom. So what we did is we focused on trying to support teachers on how to manage behaviors in the classroom, and then what kind of behaviors definitely needed administrative help, and how to distinguish between the two. Teachers were really clamoring to have transparency, to making sure their voices were heard. I'm sure it's no different here, where some of the behaviors have increased, especially at the pre-K, K, the younger levels that teachers were not used to, and all the way up through the 12th grade. So one of the things I really focused on as someone who handles discipline and someone who handles social emotional was to implement an electronic reporting system for teachers so that they could put into their administration when they were having behaviors. And they would put whether it was teacher managed, which we did professional development on what they thought was they should be dealt with as teachers, and what they felt administrators should deal with. And we worked with our principals a lot on those things. So we did, through Google Forms, we put conduct forms together where teachers could put in to their administrator, depending on their size. It could be right to their principal or it could be to their vice principal. And it would say, this happened in the classroom with so-and-so. I dealt with it, but I just want you to know. And then they could put, this happened in the classroom. It's not an emergency, but I need support on this. It did not take the place of emergencies. You know, the administrators still have walkie-talkies. They still respond to emergencies. But this was a way to make sure that administrators saw what was going on and was responding to it. Then on the Google form, they could see what the response was. They could see if the principal or the vice principal, depending on who it was, sometimes a counselor even, called home, did a parent meeting, or some other alternative methods for suspension. They could see it right there. Did not take the place of conversations, but it was a way in a fast-paced world for them to make sure that their voices were heard. So that is working. And then I get those reports. I can see them anytime, but I get the full reports every Monday. And so I'm not just using our open architects to look at discipline data, which I do use, but I'm also seeing what the teachers are saying. And I've been able to support teachers that way and support principals that way by having that system. So, and then we're dovetailing that system into also I'm not going to say a change necessarily, but using a lot of what we're learning from that to strengthen our MTSS structure. So again, we have varying levels of strength in our MTSS structure in the 15 buildings. And some, have great policies and procedures, and some were a little different. And not that we want every school to be the same, that's not the goal, but if the expectations are high and the expectations are the same, then teachers know what to expect, administrators know what to expect, and the students know what to expect as they grow up and as they go through our system. So I was able to dovetail that district change with the online reporting with improving the MTSS structure. And I did that with the help of the director of counseling and the assistant superintendent of instruction. And so we were to make that really strong. And we also had a lot of PD on that. If I'm to be honest, we're still working on it. And we're still working on that. We've gone to some conferences, and we've also worked with some of the, the Massachusetts blueprint. And so it's a work in progress, but we've already seen behaviors go down. We have seen teachers feeling more heard, and feeling that if they don't feel heard, there's an avenue where they can say, I've reported this so many times, and I can go look at it, and I can make sure it was addressed, and it helps the conversations. And so I do think that has been an effective district-wide change, and I look forward to how it continues as we keep putting in more social emotional supports into our procedures.
Hi, welcome. So requesting feedback is often described as one of the most impactful practices of effective leadership, even when feedback may be critical of district decisions or working conditions. Please give an example of a time when you actively sought out and responded to feedback from teachers and IAs, our instructional assistants, and how you validated and followed up on the responses.
All right, I'm going to read it real quick. Okay. So I absolutely agree. I just want to make sure I understood the question right. So when I actively sought out and responded to feedback, so I want to make sure I get it the right way. So there's a lot of ways. I don't think you can be an effective leader unless you're willing to hear the truth, the good, bad, and the ugly. It doesn't do any good. I'm pretty straightforward. I say what I mean, and I appreciate people who do the same. And I think that's why, some of the people I've surrounded myself with district leadership teams and teaching teams and just people I've made relationship with over the years, tend to be people who just sort of say it as they see it. So some of the ways that I've actually set out, as principal, we established a PAC, which was a principal advisory group, which was teacher-led or instructional assistants, we call them ESPs, or anyone in the staff. So they would have the agenda. I would meet with them monthly, and it was a time for them. And there was usually I had very good relationships with the union, and I had union representatives there too. And we would come once, sometimes twice a month, and they would just come and they would bring up anything that they wanted to bring up. And that was really good. It wasn't the only time they could bring things up, but it was something where they felt a little more formal, where, okay, I'm here for you, just tell me what you have, what's brewing, what do you need to get off your chest. And a good thing about it was they also came with some ideas and some solutions. And so they would come and they would say, this is a problem and I think this would work. This is upsetting us, this would work. And so that really, really worked. But I didn't want it to be just once a month. So the other way I would come feedback, honestly, I would make sure that I was going classroom to classroom in the mornings. I would stay later in the afternoons. And I would ask them, you know, what's going on? How did you feel about this? What did you think of the faculty meeting? Did I bomb it? Was I too stiff? Was I too serious? Did I joke around or not take it serious enough? And I also asked different people. I didn't just ask the people that I thought maybe, you know, that they liked me or didn't like me. So I think that was helpful. And then, so as a principal, you know, I'm going to say that one of the main things, and I talked about this in my resume, but the biggest response that I did listening to the feedback from the teachers was right after we came back from the pandemic. So when we came back, it was rough, as I'm sure for those of you who are here, all of you know that. Kind of feels like this time that's sort of like a movie. It's a weird area now, but at the time when, you know, we had trouble getting everybody back, it took us a while. So when they did come back, the teachers begged me to do something about the cell phones. It was rough, and I think other schools had the same problem. But we had a hard time re-engaging the students. They were literally watching YouTube movies. It wasn't just texting on their watch or texting on the phone. They were watching full movies. They were just completely not engaged in class. And the teachers were also coming back from the pandemic. They were re-engaging. We were still wearing masks. We were still distanced. And they said, this is our biggest problem. This is our biggest concern right now, is we can't do anything with the amount of cell phones. It was also the time where we had the TikTok challenges. And so my freshmen were coming in with, really hadn't gone to middle school. And for those middle school, God bless you, teachers and principals, that's such a transition year when kids come into ninth grade. So they came in so behind. And they were looking at the TikToks during the day, ripping down the things in the bathroom, putting lipstick and fingernail polish on the bathroom because they were looking at these videos. They were trying to find each other during the day, not going to class and wanting to fight. So the teacher said, whatever you do, please, please. So I did. At the time, it was controversial. It's been a while now. And so I took the leap and I asked for approval and the blessing of the school committee and the superintendent at the time to introduce the Yonder pouches. I worked with the community. You know, there was at the time, some people fought back to me that phones weren't addictive. I don't think anyone would fight me on that anymore, but they did. And it was also a time of high anxiety where parents wanted to contact their kids at all times because they were also anxious. But, you know, I really did think it was career suicide. I really wasn't sure where it was going to land me at the time. I was nervous, but I really, really thought it was important. So I did respond, and it took a while. It did, just to get all the pieces in place. But we did it, and it was tough. It was tough in the beginning. Those first couple days, I had students, you know, and you're talking 1,000 students. I had students literally on the floor, it was 4 floors, on the floor crying, hysterical because we had taken their phones away, which kind of proved to me that there was a problem. So from doing that, it was a work in progress, and then our other high school joined the next year. And then I also started to talk in conferences and nationwide to a lot of other people who wanted to know if they could go this route. So that was a direct response from teachers. I mean, that was a teacher saying, please look at this CBS News article on Yonder and please try to help us. And so I did, and in return, I got a lot of support from teachers, and in the school, they still support it, and they still help out a lot. So I think that that's wonderful. As the assistant superintendent, the feedback that I received, and I've spoken a little about this, but it was on behavior management, on safety and security, on making sure that nothing was brushed under the rug. So, you know, I am responsible for making sure that bullying reports get done. I am responsible for making sure I am the Title IX coordinator. So I have put strong procedures and policies in place, and every single vice principal and principal knows that the minute they think that there is a Title IX violation, they stop and they call me. And I go out and I investigate it myself. And I work very diligently with what the guidelines, Massachusetts state law. The other thing was they wanted to make sure, the response was, we want to make sure that everyone's safe and that nobody's civil rights are violated. So again, I have done a lot of professional development. I've gone around with, we do have a lawyer who works with us a few days a week, and we've gone to all the secondary buildings, and I've also started to go to the elementary. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but yes, elementary. And we've done professional development on how to investigate when there's complaints. We've done professional development on how to follow Massachusetts state law on discipline and alternatives to suspension. And we've also done a lot on, with the alternative suspension, we've done a lot of PD on restorative practices. So that's in response from what they were asking from me. So I had done restorative practice, in bits and pieces for years as a teacher, and then a little bit as a vice principal, and then you would just see it in pockets. So when the law changed in Massachusetts, and we really were strong on trying to decrease our suspension rates, I re-looked at the restorative practices, and there were people doing it, but I looked at it more from a global on how we could do more of that. So I listened to them, and I was very excited last year to re-engage in restorative practices. We did 2 professional developments, 2 days apiece, and we hired someone from the outside to come in, and we trained principals, vice principals, counselors, and a few interested teachers on the basics of restorative practices. And then then they're using some of those practices and ideas. But I think, as we know, if it's not a system, if it's not a structure, if it's not really rolled out in a manner, they'll continue just to be pockets. So this year in March, I now have a 3-day train the coach PD that's going to happen with some outside consultants. So they're going to come in and they're going to train 10 of us, my district director of counseling, myself, and some principals and counselors. And they're going to train us on how to coach others and how to train others. And then that group of 10, we will develop a 3 to 5 year plan for the district so that we can really make sure that the structure's there, and that who's ever in that seat and whoever is rowing that boat has the policies and procedures and has that knowledge, so that we can really use those restorative practices and that we can really gauge the effectiveness. And that was all from staff asking, okay, you want us to do this, this, and this. So from my side, from the support side, we need your support as well. So I do feel validated about that. I feel validated about listening to the teachers. I have very good relationships with them. I've worked hard on it. And even when we've had to have difficult feedback, going both ways, and I've had to give difficult feedback, I feel that's received well, because I'm willing to listen to and take the feedback back.
What questions do you have for us? And were there any questions we didn't ask that you would like to answer?
Okay, all right. Yes, I do. So I do feel like I have a sense, and I didn't have time to meet as many people today as I thought. I was on a strict schedule. I was told to make sure I wasn't late, and but I was happy to get to meet the principals, and I got into a couple classrooms, and I kind of got a little bit of sense. But I guess my question to you is, as a school committee, what's your biggest priority or the first thing the superintendent should do when they come into the district?
Just like we did last time, if folks have something that they would like to respond. All right, I see Member Goodwin, and then I see Member Deneve.
I think with any new superintendent, the most important thing is the listening and asking great questions. We have an amazing staff, amazing families. Kids, you want to know something? Ask the children. They'll tell you.
One of the things that we've been trying to create as a school committee in recent years is a process of creating goals. Not just goals for the district, but goals for the committee. And this is this place where we've struggled. We haven't had any effective meetings in that way yet. So my fervent plan is that we will come together as a team and have a goal-setting meeting that aligns with our strategic plan and that allows our voices to be heard, because we hear from our constituents and we have to bring forward that to you. So I'd like to see a new superintendent embrace that process and help us to create a really well-structured goal-setting plan so that we can all hit the ground rowing in the same direction with ideas for the future, because that's somewhere where we have struggled. So that's what I would like to see.
Okay, so we have worked really diligently the last 3 years. So when I came to central office, there's also a new superintendent, a new assistant superintendent, and myself. And so we have worked really diligently on goal setting and on making a strategic plan. And so we talked to the community for hours and hours. We went out to the community. We had people helping us to go out to athletic games and out to the community center and really listen to the people of the community. And then listening to the principals, to the school committee, to the staff, and to really synthesize, like, what is the vision, what are the goals, what are the values that as a district you hold dear. And then from that vision, the strategic plan was born. So I do know that the strategic plan that you have now has a lot on curriculum, student supports, infrastructure, and it's to 2028, which will be here before you know it. It'll be very, very quick. So, it would be great to look at that strategic plan and see if any of you have changed your mind or what's grown from that or what's changed from that. And then to sit and it's to look at the top. If you look at what your individual goals are as a school committee and try to synthesize that into a school committee goal. And then that would go down to the superintendent and what the superintendent goals are with that district team. And so then you go from there down to the principals and the buildings. And a lot of that has to do with transparency. And I think that when you're goal setting, you do want to say, where do we want to be? It's kind of like when you do UDL in the classroom, when you teach with the ending in mind. You want to plan your goals with the ending in mind. So I would come in and ask a ton of questions. What do you want to see Greenfield, the Greenfield Public Schools in 20 years? What would be the perfect, nothing's perfect, but what would be the perfect educational experience of a student for Greenfield? And so you need to hear from all of you about what that is, and then I agree. You have to talk to a lot of students and see what their voice is, because they will tell you, and they do know. And they may articulate it differently, depending on their age or their life experiences, or whether they've been here since pre-K or whether they came in as a 10th grader. They may have a different perspective on things, but they're gonna tell you like it is. And so, you wanna look at that from an equity lens. You wanna look at that from how the world is going to change. So You need to look at, how is AI going to change the way we teach? And how is what DESE is looking for us going to change things? How is the curriculum that you've adopted going to change things? And so you need to look at all of that and say, what is our vision? Vision of a learner. When somebody looks back and says, I had a great educational experience in Greenfield because I got to do this, this, and this. And so you want to have that vision and you want to have that insight. But then the nitty-gritty of doing goals is to sit around the room and talk about it. And sit around the room, and we've done it. We've done some brainstorming and some activities. We've done some research into best practices and the research. And so I understand how difficult it is, but I do believe you wouldn't be here if you didn't want the best for the kids. So if you start what's best for the students, and then right after that, what's best for the families, and right after that, what's best for the staff, then I think that's the common ground that you work from. But it also has to be, the goals have to be lofty, but doable. And then they have to have action plans under those goals. And they have to be measurable. So then you have to do the monitoring of them. So, there is a reason they put the strategic plan, by 2026, by 2028. Because if you just write it and it sits on a shelf and it's not alive and it's not talked about, then it doesn't mean anything. So you need to sort of go back up and down those goals from the top to the bottom, and then back up again to see, are they working? Do they need to be adjusted? Has the world changed? So I do think I can help with goals. I think I can help with vision. I would start kind of what I started today, listening to a lot of great, I got to hear from a couple good kids. They were talking about the Groundhog Day, and I walked in and I thought maybe I spilled the beans about 6 more weeks of winter, but they had heard, they knew. And, at the parent, we did have a couple kids come at the public forum, and they were talking about some things that they would like to see. They were talking about, you hear about it. They don't want to sit too much. They want more project-based learning, and it was just a couple kids, but I am sure that when you talk to them, they will tell you. They want real-life skills. They want to leave Greenfield Public Schools with a vision, with a passion. Now, as we all know, that vision and passion could change 100 times as they grow older, but they still have it. And so that's what we need to do. We need to inspire the kids. We need to help them set goals, and we need to help them achieve that. So I know it can be a daunting process, but I think once you get the structure and process in place, it becomes easier and easier. But it has to be monitored. It has to breathe life. And you have to be willing to have an open mind, and you have to be willing to keep asking questions. And that's what I would do, and I would help in any way. And when we would, as a group, get those goals, I would do everything in my power to make sure they get accomplished, make sure they are monitored, make sure that the larger community knows what the goals are and that they stand behind the goals. So I do think that's important.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That is the end of the formal interview that we have for you and the formal set of questions. Really appreciate your time and your willingness to come and do the whirlwind tour of all of our buildings
It was
today.
great. I
Yeah.
thank you.
So thank you. Members, I would love for us to take about 5 minutes, do a bio break, gather your thoughts, and then come back here ready to deliberate, since we can move ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
you
I
again.
appreciate it. I know it's been a long day for you all, so thank you very much.
Great. All right. Yeah, 5 minutes. is a public deliberation and a vote to offer the position to one of the candidates. I did believe that one of our members would like to make a motion, though.
I would like to move to add to the agenda a second public comment period before deliberations.
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion by Member Childs and a second by Member Deneve. Any discussion on that? All right, ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I think it is unanimous. So with that, then, we will reopen public comment. So if there are members of the public in the audience right now that would like to come up and give their thoughts for 3 minutes about what you've just heard, or if there's anyone online, please put your name in the chat or raise your virtual hand. Indicate in some way that you would like to give a comment. Now is the time. All right. So if you will please state your name and your address for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes, and if you'll actually give me just a moment to pull up my timer. Timer.
Okay, it's Doug Selwyn, Selwyn, 38 Forest Avenue in Greenfield.
Great, and I've got timers on.
I'm sorry?
Go for it.
Okay. Obviously wasn't prepared. First of all, I really appreciate the process, and I think that it's really hard to see somebody for half an hour, 40 minutes in this setting to have a larger picture of who they are. But the focus on who the children are and listening seems to me to be at the top of the list that I hope you consider as you're thinking through the candidates. Recognizing that Greenfield can't solve its issues alone, and that really recognizing and thinking about who the person you choose will be willing and able to reach out to work with other districts and others who are facing similar situations. I hope that's part of your consideration, because again, we can't do it alone. And a lot of the change that we need is what schools all across the state need. And so thinking about the larger picture, I hope, is also part of the equation. And I'm just going to stop there. I have way more that I could say, but I don't. So you can put your timer to sleep.
Thank you.
But thanks for asking.
All right. Any other members of the public? Great. And again, same rigmarole, if you could say your name and spell it for our recording secretary, and also your address. Thank you.
You can tell I'm new at this. Jan Maher, Janmaher, 38 Forest Avenue. And I also was not expecting to be up here, so I'm just going to share my sort of instinctive, gut level feelings at this point, which is that, and can I be overtly in favor of somebody here?
Yeah, it's your public comment.
The second candidate to me grew on me, seemed to grow in her answers through the hour that, or slightly less than an hour. So at the end of it, as a retired educator myself, but thinking about, all the issues that have been on the table here, I felt like she was the one I would really want to meet right away and start that conversation with. And it's I can't tell you like a logical set of why, but it was just the feeling that I had. I think part of it was how often she mentioned centering the students and listening to the students. And then she mentioned particular curriculum approaches, and I liked her wide range of experience with the behavioral issues that grew out of COVID. It seemed like she really learned a lot and got a handle on those. And So I trusted that she would be somebody who could really help that settling down continue to happen. So that's, if I were voting, I would cast my vote for the second candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make another call for anyone online who might want to contribute public comment. I actually think the best way for us to be able to hear you is for you to come off mute and say your name.
Jennifer Vernon. Yeah.
All right. If you could please say your name again and spell at least your last name for our recording secretary, and also give us your address for our note-taking purposes. And then I'll start a timer for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jennifer Vernon, 17 Sunset Square, Greenfield. Vernon, V as in Victor, E-R-N-O-N, first name Jennifer.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so watched both interviews. I have been part of the district for 18 years as a parent, seen a lot, been through a lot, just kind of on the outskirts mostly. Didn't expect to have a superintendent search, but we are here. And after watching both of those interviews, the second person made me excited. She gave me hope. I do have a little bit of knowledge of her, not firsthand at all, but of some of the stuff that she has done throughout her career. And I am excited about the possibility of her actually just joining our team here and helping to do the best that we can for our community. Thank you so much for everything that you guys have done. I really sincerely appreciate all of the hard work you guys put in to our community and our school system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyone else online for public comment?
Yes.
All right,
Hi, Andrea Michael.
great. And if you could just also say your address.
Yeah, my last name is Michael, and my address is 24 James Street.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, I went to most of the meet and greet today, and then I was there for some of the interviews. I stayed for what I could. I thought both candidates are strong. I can see why they got to the final round. I agree with what I heard at the other public comment that I think the second candidate seemed to me like a better fit for Greenfield. I think, again, both seem very capable and probably good at their jobs, but something about the way that the second candidate spoke and carried herself, and also maybe the fact that she's in Chicopee and understands some of the Western Mass challenges made me really feel like she was the stronger candidate for us as a community. I also liked the way she talked about centering on the student and some of the other things she said about the way that she would collaborate with the community, but with the city as well as the community. I thought spoke well of her also. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other folks online or any other folks in person? Public comment going once. If you would like to make one, you can come off mute and say your name. Public comment going twice. I want to give as much opportunity as possible. Yeah. All right. Public comment going 3 times, and we are done with the second public comment of the evening. Thank you, Member Childs, for bringing that motion forward, and thank you, Member Dinny, for seconding it to put it on the table. With that, I would love for us to transition now to the deliberation. I would like to make a motion to suspend Robert's Rules of Order to enable us to have just more of a discussion.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it passes unanimously, so we are in open discussion. For now, I would love to hear, let me cancel it. I would love to go around and hear from members, what you thought some of the strengths of each candidate were, what were the things that really stood out to you about each candidate, and to get a sense of, if you have a leaning right now, to get a sense of where folks are at in terms of which candidate they would rather, that they plan to support. We can do this popcorn style. Does anyone want to share their thoughts?
I'll go.
All right, so Mayor DeSorger, then Member Childs.
Well, thank you for so grateful for people chiming in. I thought that was wonderful. But I would support the second candidate. I agreed with some of the things that our citizens said. I thought she was very focused on the children. She also spoke about special needs and about the elementary schools, which we hadn't really heard of. And I also wanted to share, I got a phone call a week from Saturday, which I didn't call anybody and say, from Joe Comerford, who strongly recommended Carol. And I asked her if I could call people, and she said, yes, I could. And then I thought, well, if I called everyone, that would be a violation of open meeting law. So that's the first time that I said that. She and her wife knew her personally and spoke about her work ethic, dedication, and her interest in being here, and many other glowing things that I can't remember all of which, so I don't want to paraphrase or quote, incorrectly. So I'm for the second candidate. But I thought they were both wonderful and very qualified. I was on the initial, worked wonderfully. It was great working with Ian and Stacy.
Thank you. Got Member Childs next, and then
Okay.
Member Denise.
For the first one, the ones that stood out the most was, I really liked the way she talked about how she collaborated with other city departments in building a budget. I really liked the stress she put on finding the pain points of whatever she was doing to figure out how to fix, and especially the growth mindset part that she talked about at the end. For the second one, what I really liked best about her interview is how specific she was in answering questions. Her examples were very real, not theoretical, and of course the student focus. I would be comfortable with either of these women as superintendent. They struck me as very knowledgeable, experienced, educated, good people, and I think we are incredibly lucky that our choice is between awesome and awesome.
Okay, thank you, Member Denise. And then Member Webb.
I think that they were both eminently qualified, and we would be in good hands with either of them. I am Team Carol, though, because she did her homework. She knew about Greenfield. She knew about our particular struggles. She came prepared to discuss us and what we needed. She's watched city council meetings. She knew a little bit about us. I also talked to MASC, and they put a little bug in my ear about Carol, so I was excited to hear from her. I feel like she will really click with the town and the citizens, and I really appreciate that she always centered the students first and talked about concrete ways that we could improve their outcomes, which is the point of us being here. I also think Sharon would be great. I just think that Carol has a certain Western Massachusetts quality that I think really will endear her to us, and I hope that we choose her, frankly.
Okay, I have Member Webb and then Member Goodwin.
So I wrote down some things that I really liked about the first candidate, and one thing that she did say was setting up budget boundaries to support the climate if we want it, and also just having like listening sessions, being consistent with budgets, not having answers prior to asking people for opinions. These are just some of the notes I jotted down. How she took a chance and she walked in as a superintendent during COVID. And then the things that stood out for me for the second person, Carol, was just how she took the chance on the Yonder pouches. And, you know, she wasn't sure if she was going to have good feedback or not. I know it sounds like a weird thing, but as a parent, I'm not a huge Yonder pouch supporter. But my child doesn't have a cell phone. She's just a stable leader. I agree with Member Deneve saying she did her homework on us. She comes from a place that has 15 schools, so she comes from a district rather than a regional school. So that for me was also something. And her longevity when I look at her resume in the same district and working her way up the ladder, which I know is something we do value, or I value as a person.
Thank you. Member Goodwin, then Member Dyton.
When I walked in here tonight, I could have gone either way. I've spent hours reading about two amazing educators, looking at what they've done, where they've been. And I had one concern, and it came from my love for literacy, because I was really hoping we would have somebody who, you know, had promoted literacy wide. But then I looked at Team Carol. She is a licensed superintendent and a licensed special educator, which means she has literacy, because that is what you do. She also has her undergrad degree, because they're both very strong science people. Her undergrad degree is in English language arts. So as an educator for 40 some odd years, she impressed me off the charts. She knows what she's talking about. To walk into post-COVID and say, we're putting all your cell phones away, was, as she said, a career breaker. She could have lost her job. She stood behind the teachers. She listened to them, and that she could have lost her job. She made a choice to stand for the teachers and the children because she believed it was the right thing to do. So hands down, I am Team Carol.
Member Dyton?
It sounds like there's a great deal of agreement in the room. I agree that we are blessed to have interviewed two highly qualified candidates. Looking at both of their records of accomplishment, there's a lot of things to admire about these candidates. The impression that I get is that Sharon Cornware has been working in a district with a rather high-achieving school, the E.O. Smith School, with a very good record of sending students to higher ed, and this is a candidate who would be likely to bring a higher level of rigor to our schools, and has a great deal of other advantages that she would bring. However, when I think about who's the best fit for Greenfield, I'm also just drawn to Carol Cruiser because she did her homework, because she seems to care about Greenfield and understand what a city like Greenfield is like, because of her accomplishments if you look at the numbers, what she was able to accomplish in decreasing suspensions for students with disabilities, the numbers are really impressive. 2014, it was 24.5%, and in 2021, it was 12.8%. It was roughly half. And then I agree that the Yonder pouch move and these other specific examples of policy decisions that were courageous, they demonstrate a bold leader who's also capable of finding consensus. I think that this is the candidate we need.
Okay, and I'll take a moment to also share some of my thoughts. Coming into this, interview, I was also in like I don't think we can lose. You know, I think that either of these candidates would do an admirable job and are perfectly qualified for the role. And so it was a matter of thinking who is the best fit for our district, for our community, for the folks who are around us. And, you know, towards the end of these interviews, I also was finding myself drawn towards Carol Cruiser, primarily because of the way that she not only discussed, but also demonstrated just like a very clear and open way of communicating. I did feel like this was someone who would tell me not what I wanted to hear, but what I needed to hear. And that, I think, is something that we need. I also really appreciated the focus on creating lasting systems and structures. I imagine that some of the structures that she's been creating in Chicopee will live even if she's not there, and that really matters to me. Someone who is interested in building something that they might not see the fruits of even. And so, you know, that as well as the way that she talked about restorative practices, that is something that we have been working toward in our district, and I think that it would be really great if we could have a leader who has some experience there and who is also committed to, you know, getting that to be something that, what was the phrase? Getting our schools to row in the same direction on that, I think, is another feature of what I appreciated about how she spoke of the work. What I did really enjoy about our first candidate, Sharon Conoyer, was the discussion about building a budget across multiple towns and the complexity that's involved in there. I thought that would have, you know, that is another thing that we've talked about on this committee of really wanting a budget that feels transparent and that involves everybody in it, and that is like really planfully made, articulated, discussed, that agreement is there. And I feel that while that is a plus for Sharon, I don't think that Carol couldn't do that. You know, I think that with the right team, I think that that Carol could also do that work. So those are some of the reasons why I intend to support the second candidate. It seems like we're approaching kind of a consensus here. There were a couple of people who didn't specifically say who they might be. Well, you said who you might be voting for, but I don't think you did. Doesn't really matter. Do we think, just based on what we've heard, would we like to have more discussion? Is there more to say? Does anyone have other comments that they've got or other thoughts and reflections? Yes, Member Webb.
I just want to thank I know this is not related, but I want to thank the everyone who participated in the first interview process, and the people who gave tours today, and just everyone in Greenfield who I'm sure opened their arms for the places our candidates did visit. I too am also in favor of our second person, Carol.
All right, have a good one.
I not only want to thank you, but I just feel like this has been a more transparent process than we've ever seen our school committee in Greenfield actually use. So bravo. Just, I think involving our union, which, thank you for being here, public comment, I mean, all of it, I think is part of what our city needs to do across all avenues, is involve everybody. So thank you for doing that.
Member Childs?
If we're thanking people, we also have to thank Judy from NESDEC, the consultant who guided us through this. She was wonderful. Lots of expertise, advice, and we were very well supported in this process.
And I would like to give a special shout out to our food service folks for provisioning us for the first round interviews, making sure that all of the people in the screening committee had food and hot beverage for the evening. So really appreciate them. Thanks, Terry. And I would also like to give a special shout out to our facilities folks who made sure everything looked so good for when these candidates came and did their walkthroughs of the buildings, and especially when they were coming in for the interviews in the library, and for also helping one of our candidates find their phone. So again, yeah, special shout out to those folks who really are, you know, they make our schools go round, and a special, like, really thank you to the other folks who were part of that small team pulling all of this process together. It was a lot of work. We're really thankful. So, with all of that, it sounds like we have come to a consensus, and I would love to hear a motion from a member to appoint the candidate.
I will make a motion
Yeah.
that we extend the offer of the superintendency to Carol Cruiser.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion from Member Deneve and a second from Member Goodwin. Any more discussion? All right. I think if you would like to, I would love to get this on a roll call. Yeah, just do it.
Member Deneve?
Yes.
Mayor Disorder?
Yes.
Member Deitman?
Yes.
Member Goodwin?
Yes.
Chair Sexton?
Yes.
Secretary Webb? I am a yes. Vice Chair Childs?
Yes.
And the
All
vote
right.
passes unanimously.
Thank you all so much. We have just voted to extend an offer to Carol Cruiser for our superintendency.
Is she
assuming-
here still?
I believe she went home.
Oh, okay.
But we will give the phone call and let her know, and then begin the formal process of entering into a contract negotiation, which we'll revisit that as a group later.
So we'll need an executive session
We
to
will.
do that, yes.
Yes.
Do we have a draft contract? Have we set a time for executive session to do this?
My intention was to put it at next week's meeting.
Okay.
Yep. But that also, yeah, so we'll need to do some back and forth with the candidate as well. Or I guess with the now.
Well, we have
they're
to
a
do the
candidate
executive session first, and then back and forth with the candidate, and then the final public vote.
Yes.
Okay. just making sure.
Yep. So that will be our process. But thank you all so much for sticking with it, for being here. Really appreciate all of you showing up and being part of this and your thoughtful deliberations and comments. And thank you to the public again. With that, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion from Mayor Disorder and a second from Member Goodwin. This has to be a roll call vote, I think.
Member Deneve?
Yes.
Mayor Disorder?
Yes.
Member Deitman?
Yes.
Chair Sexton?
Yes.
Member Goodwin?
Yes.
Myself, Secretary Webb, I'm a yes. Vice Chair Childs?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned at
Look at it, passed unanimously. Imagine that.
at 9:27 PM.